but I spent it standing outside of churches with other clergy and faith leaders, a lot of Jews, because we don't. Sunday isn't our prayer day, but we spent it outside of the churches because ICE goes into the churches and they haul people out, and so we were there to provide at best a deterrence, which I don't think they're deterred by anything, but at least advance warning. We're watching every car that goes by. We got whistles ready to go so that at least there's advance warning and the church knows to lock their doors and the children inside the church can get together and play with each other, because these are families that have been locked inside their homes because ICE is coming in everywhere they can. And it's just some real hatefulness, these ICE agents, just deep, deep hatefulness and deep, deep racism. All this smearing of the Somali American community here in Minneapolis. 95% of them are U.S. citizens.
Right. And not only that, everybody, be very aware that Minnesota ranks only 25th, I believe, in the number of, quote, immigrants who may or may not be, quote, illegal, because even if you are in the legal process, like little 5-year-old Liv's dad was, they still are going after people. This quote pledge to only go after criminals has turned out to be a lie, and they are silencing voices. Zack, last week we had on Nikema Levy Armstrong. She has since been indicted, hurt-walked, and actually had her image altered, deliberately altered by the White House to make her look like she's, in tears and regretful and all of this, when we know she's standing strong. Tell people why. Faith leader Ariel Gold has told us why she's there. Why are you, because you've been there for weeks, why are you on the ground in Minnesota as a film producer, and what have you seen? What's different to the two of you? What's different about what you're seeing in Minnesota and what you've seen so often in other demonstrations? Zack, please share with us.
As Ariel said, the community on the ground is something I've never seen before. And even 6 years ago, when I was in Minneapolis covering the George Floyd protests, the level of community organization that has built up over the last couple of years in that city is something that I've never seen before. Like it is the type of organization, I want to emphasize this. It is not funded by George Soros. It's not funded by anybody. This is just people going on private messaging apps and warning neighbors to neighbors. None of this stuff where it's just like, oh, there's a scary person in a black hoodie, like the old Nextdoor apps and stuff like that. If you ever want to learn the worst of your community, you go on those things and find out everybody's super suspicious about each other. This is community. Everybody's just saying, hey, there's a weird look. There's a car with an SUV with all tinted windows the engine's running and it's been sitting outside my house for the last 2 hours. Can somebody just walk up to it and see who's inside or what's going on? And then, they check license plates, they match things. It's this incredible organization that that we follow as journalists when we're on the ground. We follow, we have one person in the car following all the different community message apps, and those go down to blocks. There'll be like a 4-block area, and they'll be like, this is this community, whatever the name of the community is. And the people are just saying, hey, we just saw 2 SUVs drive by going, 20 miles over the speed limit, which is usually a really good sign. It's either one of 2 people. It's journalists following ICE or ICE. Because they're the only people that right now in that town that's committing a lot of traffic infractions. I would say as a driver that we never did, but I wouldn't say that in a court of law. But we got to follow and catch them and be able to cover the story, because these guys blow through lights, they run cars off the road. One of the first things I did, I got into the airport 2 weeks ago, landed, got picked up by a great live streamer, Andrew Mercado. Highly recommend following him. And got in the car, drove directly to what a scene that was unfurling, and they had driven a car off the road, damaging the car, basically breaking, destroying the car. Pulled somebody out of the car. Immediately, 6, 7, 8 ICE officers popped out with their pepper ball guns and tear gas canisters ready, and only aiming at journalists and members of the community who's come out to either just view what the heck was happening, and they're in the middle of a 4-lane road that they had shut down basically because they had destroyed this car and pushed it off the road. They pulled somebody out, threw them in the back of their SUV, and then drove away. Left the car doors open. Tear gas was in the air. Pepper pellets were in the air. And then they just drove away. And then they basically left because they're doing absolutely no communication with the local law enforcement to basically do the cleanup afterward. That's to the point that finally, which is insane, the Mayor Frey, he came out and said, hey, if you're taken by ICE and obviously very often re-released because they find out you're an American citizen because they have no idea what they're doing, don't worry, you're not going to pay impound fees. Like, that's the level that this happens, that it's happening enough that the mayor had to address how many cars are left abandoned on the side of the road because they kidnapped somebody right out of the thing. No warrant, no nothing. They just saw a license plate. They're using the flock cameras, are working with them. Palantir, if you work for Palantir, it's time to quit, guys. You're part of an evil organization that is helping people kidnap children and teenagers and adults off of the city street. Anyway, sorry. had to add that. I just read a story about Palantir. So.
No. They're definitely a problem, and they've been, given all kind of access to all our data by the federal government. They're very dangerous. I want to go back to you, Ariel. To answer that question about what is different about this fight. You've been in many demonstrations. You've traveled the world to fight injustice. What is different about what you're seeing on the ground in Minnesota?
It's the community. It's the community that's just based in such love. That's right. People here, they were traumatized in 2020, and that trauma hasn't gone away, but they have organized since then. And it's been a sustained resistance, sustained non-cooperation with this authoritarian takeover, and that includes the city. That includes the state. There is non-cooperation here, and that's what we need. And sustained resistance requires mutual aid and care. It requires that rest so folks can go to church on a Sunday and have that moment to pray, or to synagogue on a Friday and rejuvenate a bit, right? Because this isn't ending tomorrow. Really, the moment I got here, I was like, oh, wow, I've seen this before. This is Palestine. And this is, folks helping each other out. When I travel, you're right, I've traveled a lot. And when I travel, unless it's a real short trip, one of the things I really like to do is I like to take public transportation. I like to take the bus and just feel, what it's like to just be, on the bus, regular people. And, man, you're on the bus here with the regular people, and they've got gas masks with them off their arm because they're going to do a next shift of ICE Watch. This is,
wow.
I learned how to do protected presence, that kind of watch, and walking people, because when folks would leave the church, we would walk them to their cars, walk them to their houses. And I learned how to do that in the West Bank when I used to walk young children to school in the morning and from school in the afternoon. And people here are just trading shifts doing that. And it's the white folks, right? It's the white folks who are doing that because we have a degree more. Obviously, as you see, we can still be shot and killed. But we have, a much higher level of protection and privilege. And so, folks, this is what love your neighbor looks like. This is what real cooperation looks like. And where I've experienced it before is when I've seen my activist Jewish Israeli friends that go into the West Bank week after week after week to just be there for each other. There's folks here, families that haven't left their homes in weeks, and they're getting food delivered from a pastor. I heard of a family that'll only open the door for a particular pastor. And, he's real careful going there that he doesn't get followed by ICE. And that takes love. That's really what it takes. It takes love and care. And we can't be leaving here depressed. And certainly there's a lot to be down about, but I'm leaving here hopeful.
All right.
Right. And Ariel, and Ariel, I know one of the things I wanted our listeners to hear is that I know that you have a friend that's there in Minneapolis that has adopted an Ethiopian son. Could you share with our listeners what your friend and the age of the son that they've adopted is going through right now as a result of these actions with ICE?
Yeah, and let me just back up a little bit and say her name is Diana Ostrike, and you can find her book called you just Google Diana Waging Peace Project. She served in the Iraq War, and she got there, and Jesus saved her from, as she tells it, Jesus saved her from having to kill, and she put down her weapon during the Iraq War and dedicated her life to peacemaking, and that included her and her husband later adopting a son from Ethiopia. And she lives in a very white area of Minnesota, and she's terrified, right? She is terrified for her son, and her son knows the risk that he faces and the danger that he's in. And on Friday, there were 100 of us, faith leaders and clergy, that were arrested at the Minneapolis airport. And they asked first for Minnesotans to be the ones, to risk arrest. And she said, I can't do it. I need to, if I get held for too long, I need to be available to my son. I can't do it. And I said, I'm in your place. Let me be the one to do that. It's day to day for them, right? And that means, it means as well, she knows well what moral injury is from her time as a soldier, and she works with veterans and, is really versed on that. And yet it is a different type of moral injury that her son is incurring right now at this very moment. And, in the sense that he's lucky to have a family that can protect him a bit more. But what a terrible thing, right? That's not how you want to raise your kids. I was talking to a local pastor on Sunday, and he said, it was the day after Alex Preddy was killed, and he said, I was driving in the car yesterday, and his son is about 5. He's in the back seat in his car seat, and I guess the radio was on, and the kid says, "Dad, they killed another one." And his heart just broke, right? Because it has become normalized here. Just like in Palestine, when kids used to come up to me and so proud that they could teach me how to recognize when the Jaish, which is Arabic for army, when the Jaish was coming.
Okay. All right. And okay, thank you. And let's talk real quickly again, folks. Don't be sitting and listening to this show and saying, oh, how horrible, there's nothing I can do. Yes, there is something you can do. There's something all of your friends can do. We want you to call every single person you know, write them, text them, tweet them, get on LinkedIn, do what you can, but tell them right now to call their senators and to tell their senators to vote no on any new money for the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. Call 202-224-3121. We need that done now. Call again, 202-224-3121, and say vote no on any, not a dime, to DHS. We have to do this, people. This is urgent. Now, I want to get to you, Zach.